They walk into a room, and it feels like the world rearranges around them. Every glance, every word, every silence. Somehow, it all becomes part of their story. They don't just live life, they narrate it. Every win is a triumph, every setback, a plot twist, every heartbreak, character development. It's not arrogance exactly, it's a deep, unconscious belief that they are the main character of existence. This is the essence of Protagonist Syndrome, a subtle psychological pattern where people see life as a movie and themselves as its central hero. It sounds harmless at first. After all, isn't self-importance better than self-neglect? But when the lens of the world bends too sharply inward, something shifts. The story becomes less about truth and more about control. Protagonist syndrome isn't vanity, it's identity management. It's what happens when reality feels too uncertain, too fragmented, too uncontrollable. So the mind turns it into a story it can survive. A story where every coincidence has meaning, every betrayal has purpose. Every relationship becomes a subplot in the grand narrative of me. It's a defense mechanism, a way to give chaos structure. And it usually begins early. Many who develop this mindset grew up unseen. They learned to survive by turning their inner world into a place where they mattered. If no one listened, they built a version of themselves who could never be ignored. If no one protected them, they became the hero who always survives. It wasn't delusion, it was self-preservation. At first, it's empowering. Seeing yourself as the protagonist gives you drive, focus, and resilience. It helps you romanticize pain, find meaning in struggle, and turn boredom into destiny. It makes you feel alive, like everything is leading somewhere important. And for a while, that story keeps you safe. But over time, it becomes a prison, because when you're the protagonist, everyone else becomes a supporting character, their needs, their truths, their pain, all filtered through how they affect your arc. Their love becomes validation, their rejection becomes betrayal, their boundaries become obstacles in your plot. And here's the quiet tragedy. Protagonist syndrome doesn't make you self-loving, it makes you self-centered in the most fragile way. Your worth depends on being the hero, the chosen one, the one who matters most. So the moment life doesn't reflect that, panic sets in. When someone doesn't like you, it's not just indifference, it's a narrative flaw. When something goes wrong, it's not randomness, it's the universe testing you. When someone succeeds, it feels like a rival stealing your spotlight. You start interpreting normal life events like they're scenes written about you. A stranger's mood becomes an omen, a friend's distance becomes a betrayal arc. Every quiet moment becomes the low point before the comeback. It's dramatic and exhausting, because life isn't a story. It's not structured to make sense or to reward growth or to deliver satisfying endings. But people with protagonist syndrome can't bear that idea. Randomness feels unbearable. Meaninglessness feels like death, so they cling to the story, even when it hurts them. They'll justify toxic relationships as character development. They'll stay in chaos because it feels cinematic. They'll chase intensity instead of peace, because peace feels like the end credits. And deep down, beneath all the narration and imagined destiny, there's usually something raw, a loneliness so old it's become myth. Because when you see yourself as the center of the story, you're also forever isolated in it. No one else can truly understand what it's like to be you, the misunderstood main character, the one the world doesn't get yet. That's the real wound behind protagonist syndrome. It's not about ego, it's about disconnection. The story protects you from pain, but it also keeps you from intimacy. You can't be truly close to others when they're written as side characters in your script, and yet it's hard to let go of. Because without the story, who are you? If you're not the hero, then what's the point of all this? That question, the quiet, terrifying one, is what keeps most people stuck inside their own movie. It's safer to be the misunderstood lead than an anonymous human. It's safer to believe life is leading somewhere than to face the truth that maybe it's just happening. But the longer you live that way, the more detached you become from reality. You stop experiencing the world. You interpret it. You stop seeing people. You cast them, you stop feeling moments, you frame them, and slowly your life stops being lived and starts being performed. It's not narcissism in the classic sense. A narcissist wants admiration, a protagonist wants narrative. They don't need everyone to love them, they just need everyone to matter to them. They'll replay conversations, dramatize choices, assign meaning to coincidences, and wait for the plot twist that proves everything was worth it. It's beautiful, in a tragic way, a mind trying to turn chaos into coherence. But coherence built on illusion can't hold forever. At some point, the script stops working. Life refuses to follow the narrative. The people around you stop fitting their roles, and suddenly the story breaks. And you have to face the raw, unscripted reality underneath. Every person with Protagonist Syndrome carries a quiet contradiction, a craving for control and a fear of insignificance. They don't always want to be admired, they just want life to make sense. They want to believe there's a through line connecting every heartbreak, every failure, every coincidence, something that justifies their pain. It's not arrogance that drives them, but longing. A longing for coherence in a world that often feels meaningless. Because if life is a story, then every wound has purpose, every mistake becomes destiny, and that illusion, while fragile, feels safer than chaos. This mindset often begins in childhood. When a child grows up in unpredictability, emotional neglect, criticism, inconsistency, they learn to survive by creating meaning out of confusion. They start imagining that their suffering is the beginning of something important. They think, one day, this will all make sense. It's a way of turning helplessness into hope. The fantasy of being the main character becomes a shield against insignificance. It tells them they're not just lost, they're on a journey, that all the hurt is building character, that all the loneliness is part of becoming who they're meant to be. It's comforting until it becomes a cage. Because the moment you see your life as a narrative, you begin to curate it instead of living it. You start asking, how does this fit into my story? Instead of, how does this make me feel? You start chasing moments that look meaningful instead of experiences that are real. You start treating people as symbols, events as signs, emotions as lessons, and slowly you lose the ability to experience life without analyzing it. The world becomes a script, and you're both the actor and the director, constantly editing, rewriting, and performing. Every emotion must serve a purpose. Every loss must be a setup for redemption. Even pain must be poetic. But real life isn't written that way. Sometimes pain is just pain. Sometimes things don't lead anywhere, and for someone with Protagonist Syndrome, that's unbearable. They can't accept randomness. It feels like erasure. If there's no meaning, then what was the point of all they've endured? So they keep rewriting reality, reshaping the world until it fits the story they need it to tell. Relationships, especially, become tangled in this. To the person with Protagonist Syndrome, others often play roles: the savior, the villain, the mentor, the love interest, the betrayer. People stop being people and start being plot devices. And when someone refuses to play their assigned role, the protagonist feels disoriented, even betrayed, not because the person did something wrong, but because they disrupted the script. You can see it when they say things like, "I thought you were different. I thought we were meant to meet. I thought this was fate." These are not just words, they're script notes from a collapsing narrative. Deep down, it's not about controlling others, it's about maintaining identity. Because if others stop following the story, the protagonist fears disappearing from it altogether. They need witnesses, people who confirm their significance. Not necessarily through praise, but through reaction. They need others to respond, to see, to acknowledge, because silence feels like invisibility, and invisibility feels like death to the ego. That's why social media feeds this syndrome. Perfectly. Every post, every caption, every main character energy trend gives a sense of authorship, a way to curate the self and present it to the audience. You become both performer and spectator of your own life. Your pain becomes content. Your growth becomes aesthetic. Your identity becomes narrative. And at first, it feels empowering. You're finally seen. You're finally the star of your own movie. But over time, the line between who you are and who you perform starts to blur. You start chasing dramatic moments, not for meaning, but for momentum, because stillness feels like irrelevance. This is why people with Protagonist Syndrome often create emotional turbulence where none exists. They stir up intensity, drama, or conflict, not out of malice, but because it makes them feel alive. Calm feels like emptiness. Routine feels like background noise. They need tension, stakes, transformation, otherwise the story stalls. It's exhausting, this constant need for narrative. Every emotion has to mean something. Every person has to teach something. Every ending has to reveal something. And when it doesn't, they spiral, not just into sadness, but into existential confusion. Because if the story stops making sense, what's left? That's when the cracks start to show. The self-narrative that once protected them becomes suffocating. They start to realize that in always trying to be someone, they forgot how to be. They can't tell where the performance ends and the person begins. They crave connection, but only know how to play characters. They want love, but don't know how to receive it without turning it into a scene. They want meaning, but have built their life around the idea that it must be extraordinary, and ordinary moments now feel like failure. They become trapped between reality and the version of themselves they've written. And the more they cling to that version, the further they drift from authenticity. They confuse attention with intimacy, aesthetic with identity, significance with self-worth. And when life inevitably disappoints the script, when relationships end without closure, when goals don't feel as fulfilling as expected, when no grand revelation arrives, they don't just feel sad, they feel unreal. Like the movie stopped before the final act. Because no one told them the truth. The story was never supposed to make sense. It was only supposed to be lived. At some point, the story stops working. You can only romanticize pain for so long before it just feels like pain. You can only chase meaning for so long before you realize you've been running from presence. And that's when the illusion starts to break. When you finally look around and see that everyone else has their own story too. Not supporting roles, not extras. Entire worlds, each as vivid as yours. That realization hits like a quiet earthquake. Because for so long, everything revolved around you. Your growth, your healing, your destiny. Now you begin to see that life was never a movie with one central plot. It's a web, not a script. Billions of lives intersecting for brief, fleeting moments before continuing on their own paths. And suddenly, you're not the hero anymore. You're part of something much larger and much less controllable. At first, that truth feels like death. The death of narrative, the death of specialness, the death of meaning built on grandiosity. But underneath that death lies something freer, reality. Because once you stop trying to be someone, you finally get to be. You begin to notice things you missed before, the small, ordinary, unremarkable details that never made it into your script. The sound of rain hitting glass, a stranger's laugh on the street, the warmth of sunlight on a quiet morning when nothing happens. Moments that don't advance a plot, but soften a heart. You start to see beauty not as a scene, but as a presence. You stop asking what everything means and start asking how it feels. And for the first time, you begin to experience life directly, without turning it into performance. Healing from Protagonist Syndrome isn't about abandoning confidence or ambition. It's about releasing the need for your existence to always be extraordinary. It's learning that significance doesn't come from being central, but from being real, connected, aware, alive in the moment rather than in the narrative. You realize that the story you've been telling yourself was never wrong. It just wasn't the whole picture. You are the protagonist of your life. But so is everyone else. Your perspective isn't the lens of the world, it's one of many, and that understanding changes everything. Because when you stop trying to stand out, you start to belong. When you stop viewing people as supporting characters, you start hearing them as full humans, with their own fears, desires, dreams, and doubts. Conversations stop being monologues, waiting for your next line. Love stops being validation, friendship stops being audience, and connection, real connection, finally begins. You'll still have the urge to turn moments into stories. It's hard to unlearn narrative thinking, especially when it once protected you. But now, instead of using stories to control life, you'll start using them to understand it. You'll tell stories not to be admired, but to connect, not to center yourself, but to share yourself. And slowly, the story stops owning you. You own it. The hardest part of this healing is facing the silence that follows when the performance ends. Without the narrative, the world feels quieter, less dramatic, even dull. But that quiet is not emptiness. It's peace. It's what happens when your nervous system stops scanning for meaning and finally starts resting in the moment. You begin to see that the need to be the main character was never about ego. It was about fear. Fear of being invisible, fear of being ordinary, fear that if you weren't someone special, you'd disappear. But you don't need to be extraordinary to matter. You matter simply because you're here. That realization doesn't come in fireworks. It comes in stillness. You no longer need a soundtrack or a moral or a destiny. You start living scenes that aren't cinematic, but they're honest. Eating breakfast without checking your reflection. Listening without rehearsing your response. Crying without turning it into poetry. Loving without trying to make it eternal. That's real life. Unscripted, imperfect, and fleeting. And that's where freedom lives. One day, you'll look back and smile at your old self, the one who needed everything to be significant, who mistook attention for connection, who tried to make sense of pain by turning it into plot. You won't hate them, you'll understand them, because that version of you was just trying to survive a meaningless world by giving it meaning. But now you know, meaning doesn't have to be grand. It can be gentle, it can exist quietly without being performed. You'll still have moments where you slip into narration, where you catch yourself seeing your life as a scene. That's okay. You're not erasing the protagonist. You're integrating them. Let them sit beside you, not ahead of you. Let the story unfold without needing to control its direction. Because the truth is, the story was never yours alone. It never had to be. You were never the center of the universe. You were a note in its symphony. And once you stop trying to conduct it, you finally get to hear how beautiful it already was.